Before we start practicing advanced techniques, it's important that we talk about traction management and how we use that for maximum braking, turning, and swerving. We'll start with straight line emergency braking. Let's say you weren't practicing good street strategies, you were following too close, and the vehicle in front of you slams on its brakes. It's important that you brake quickly, but don't just grab a bunch of controls. Up until now, our technique for stopping was in with both hands, down with both feet, left foot to the ground first, while we keep our head and eyes up on a target. Now we're going to add to that one more component, which is squeeze. We're going to squeeze the front brake harder and harder and harder until we come to a stop. So the technique now is both hands, both feet, squeeze left foot to the ground, all the while looking up at our target. The first two steps, hands, feet, begin the braking process, which moves weight forward onto the front tire, giving it more traction. Then we squeeze more and more and more, taking advantage of that weight and additional traction. So we can't just grab a bunch of brake. We have to squeeze as we come to a stop. More and more and more until it comes to a stop. This technique makes it less likely that we skid our front tire, and it will shorten our stopping distances. As we increase our braking, it's possible we will skid. In a rear wheel skid, if the rear tire becomes out of line with the direction of travel and then you release that brake, the rear tire will regain traction pointing in the wrong direction, causing a fishtail and possibly even a high side fall. So the technique for dealing with a rear wheel skid on drive pavement where the rear wheel has come out of alignment from the direction of travel is to press down even harder and keep that rear wheel locked until you come to a complete stop. A front tire skid can be even more dangerous because you lose your ability to steer and it becomes very hard to balance the motorcycle. So the technique for a front tire skid, if it happens, is to release the front brake and start your squeeze all over again. So if you have a front tire skid because you grabbed the brake too quickly or didn't transfer enough weight forward or there was something on the road that caused traction problems, is to release the brake and then start squeezing all over again. So you have a skid, release, and start all over again. This time probably squeezing less quickly. Braking and cornering both require traction, so it's important you manage the available traction to avoid skids and falls. If there's room and time, then you can slowly apply the brakes as you straighten the motorcycle. In an emergency situation, say a car stopped around a blind corner, it's important that you straighten the motorcycle first and then apply maximum straight line braking. So you have to free up the traction you were using in the corner by straightening the motorcycle completely, straighten your head, handlebars, motorcycle, and then apply maximum braking force as though it were a straight line stop, because it is. So let's say you're coming around the corner, sense a need to stop in an emergency, then you have to straighten, then stop. Straighten your head, handlebars, and the motorcycle, then stop. This will free up the traction you were using for cornering and make it available for the stop. Straighten, then stop. Swerving is two hard counter steers. You press hard in one direction to avoid an obstacle, and then you press hard in the opposite direction to get back in line with the road. But since it's hard cornering, you want to avoid braking while swerving. And since rolling off the throttle is engine braking, you have to avoid even that while swerving. So hold the throttle steady as you press. If for some reason you're on the brakes before you realize you had to swerve, you have to get off the brakes and open the throttle to the point at least that you're not decelerating before press. So in this instance, you see the obstacle, your first instinct was to slow. You realize you're not going to be able to stop, so you get off the brake, open the throttle, press to get around it. To recap, in an emergency stop, squeeze the front brake, don't grab it. In a rear wheel skid, keep it locked till you're stopped. In a front wheel skid, release and reapply. In an emergency, stop on a curve, straighten, then stop. And in a swerve, do not mix braking and swerving. Now, most of these skills are going to go against your instincts, so you're going to have to practice them to train your brain for emergency situations. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, and in the next video, we'll practice these skills.